Richard Kuklinski. Richard Leonard Kuklinski, known as the Iceman, claimed to have murdered over 200 people during his 30-year career as a contract killer. Standing at 6 feet 5 inches tall and weighing nearly 300 pounds, he worked primarily for the Gambino crime family, eliminating witnesses, informants, and rival mobsters. What made Kuklinski especially dangerous was his unpredictability. He used guns, knives, crossbows, cyanide spray, and sometimes just his bare hands. His nickname came from freezing victims' corpses for months before dumping them, which confused investigators trying to determine time of death. Meanwhile, he lived in suburban New Jersey with his wife and 3 children who had no idea about his true profession. By the mid-1980s, law enforcement began closing in. The FBI, ATF, and New Jersey prosecutors launched a joint investigation, but they had no concrete evidence. So they sent in undercover agent Dominic Polifrone, who posed as a fellow hitman, and lured Kuklinski into a sting involving a fake cyanide deal. The plan worked. On December 17, 1986, Kuklinski was arrested and later convicted of 5 murders, receiving 4 consecutive life sentences. For years, he gave interviews from prison, describing his crimes in detail. In 2003, he confessed to killing NYPD detective Peter Calabro and agreed to testify that Gambino underboss Sammy the Bull Gravano had ordered the hit. But on March 5, 2006, just days before he was scheduled to take the stand, Richard Kuklinski died in prison. He was 70 years old. The official cause was cardiac arrest. An autopsy confirmed natural causes, though the timing raised suspicions. The Iceman died quietly in a hospital bed, taking countless secrets to his grave. Roy DeMeo. Roy Albert DeMeo led one of the most feared murder crews in mafia history. Operating out of the Gemini Lounge in Brooklyn during the 1970s and early 1980s, DeMeo and his crew were suspected of killing between 75 and 200 people. But it wasn't just the number of murders that made them notorious. It was how they disposed of the bodies. DeMeo created the Gemini method. Victims would be lured to a back room, shot in the head with a silenced pistol, then immediately stabbed in the heart to stop blood flow. The body would be dismembered, wrapped in plastic bags, and dumped across the city. Many victims simply vanished. By the early 1980s, the FBI was conducting intense surveillance, and Gambino boss Paul Castellano feared DeMeo would turn informant. Castellano's solution was brutal. He ordered DeMeo's own crew to kill him. DeMeo knew the end was coming. He became paranoid, rarely leaving his mansion, and started carrying a concealed shotgun everywhere. On January 10, 1983, he was called to a meeting at a crew member's shop. Despite his suspicions, he went. That night, he failed to attend his daughter's birthday party, and his family immediately knew something was wrong. 10 days later, DeMeo's Cadillac was discovered in a Brooklyn parking lot. Inside the trunk was DeMeo's body, riddled with bullets. 2 shots behind the ears matched the signature method of the Gemini twins, Anthony Center and Joseph Testa. They had been given a choice: kill their boss or die. DeMeo, who perfected murder as a business, was betrayed by the very men he had trained. Harry Strauss. Harry Strauss, better known as Pittsburgh Phil, was one of the deadliest assassins working for organized crime in 1930s New York. Born in Brooklyn in 1909, Strauss was a sharp dresser who spent an hour at the barber each morning. But beneath the polished appearance was a man who genuinely loved to kill. By age 30, he had been arrested 18 times but never convicted. Strauss reportedly killed over 100 people, though estimates range as high as 500. He used ice picks, ropes, knives, guns, and whatever else was available. He would scout murder locations ahead of time and find the right tool for the job. He treated murder like a profession, comparing himself to a baseball player working his way up from the minor leagues. His reputation made him valuable for out-of-town contracts. In one famous story, he walked into a crowded Detroit diner and shot Purple Gang mobster Harry Millman, wounding 5 other customers. After hits, he often stayed in town to read about his work in newspapers. His downfall began in 1940 when childhood friend Abe Reles was arrested and decided to cooperate. Reles testified that Strauss had stabbed bookkeeper Irving Feinstein to death with an ice pick in September 1939. The evidence was overwhelming. Strauss tried everything to avoid execution. In court and on death row, he feigned insanity, growing a beard, refusing to bathe, and gnawing on a leather briefcase strap. The act failed. On September 19, 1940, a jury convicted him and sentenced him to death. On June 12, 1941, Harry Pittsburgh Phil Strauss was executed in the electric chair at Sing Sing prison. Witnesses said he walked to the chair with a sneer on his face. The man who had killed for pleasure and profit was gone. Alexander Solonik. Alexander Solonik, known as Super Killer, was Russia's most dangerous hitman in the 1990s. A former Soviet soldier and police officer, Solonik was expelled from law enforcement for extreme violence and turned to contract killing for the Russian mob. What made Solonik notorious was his ability to shoot with both hands simultaneously, firing 2 pistols at once in what Russians called Macedonian style. Between 1990 and 1994, he assassinated multiple high-ranking mob bosses. In 1992, he killed thief-in-law Viktor Nikiforov, and months later murdered Valery Dlugach inside a crowded nightclub surrounded by bodyguards. No place was safe when Solonik had a contract. In 1995, police finally arrested him at a Moscow station. But during processing, Solonik pulled out a hidden Glock 17, sending the entire station into panic before officers finally overpowered him. He was sent to Matrosskaya Tishina, Russia's most secure prison. Within months, with help from a corrupt guard, he climbed down the prison wall using climbing equipment and escaped. Solonik fled to Greece, where he set up his own criminal empire with around 50 men and bought several luxury villas near Athens. Russian authorities placed him on their top 10 most wanted list, but he seemed untouchable in his Greek sanctuary. On January 31, 1997, another Russian hitman, Alexander Pustovalov, arrived at Solonik's villa. Pustovalov was an ex-Marine and fellow assassin, someone Solonik trusted. The two men talked, and at some point, Solonik turned his back. In that moment, Pustovalov pulled out a thin cord, wrapped it around Solonik's neck, and strangled him to death. His body wasn't found for 2 months. The super killer, who had escaped Russia's most secure prison and built an empire abroad, was eliminated by someone from his own world. Some believe Solonik faked his death and disappeared, but Greek authorities confirmed the body was his. Sam DeStefano. Sam DeStefano, known as Mad Sam, was one of the most sadistic enforcers in the history of the Chicago outfit. Unlike other mobsters who killed for business, DeStefano genuinely enjoyed torturing his victims. He operated a juice loan racket and was notorious for taking debtors to his soundproof basement, where he would torture them for days before killing them. He used ice picks, blowtorches, and any tool that could inflict maximum pain. DeStefano was also genuinely unstable. He would fly into violent rages over minor issues, and even his own crew feared him. FBI agents considered him the worst torture murderer in American history. The Chicago outfit tolerated him because he was effective at collecting debts and eliminating problems, but by the early 1970s, he had become too much of a liability. In 1973, DeStefano was preparing to stand trial for the murder of Leo Foreman, alongside Tony Spilotro and his brother Mario. Sam's courtroom antics became legendary, showing up in pajamas, arriving on a stretcher, shouting through a bullhorn, even trying to represent himself. The outfit feared he would jeopardize everyone's defense. They decided he had to go. On April 14, 1973, DeStefano was at his Chicago home. That morning, Mario and Spilotro called him into the garage under the pretense of an important issue. When Sam stepped inside, he was ambushed. A shotgun blast tore into him at close range, killing him instantly. His body collapsed in a pool of blood on the garage floor. Mad Sam, who had tortured so many in his basement of horrors, was killed in his own garage by men he trusted. No one was ever charged with his murder. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more stories like this, or suggest which topic I should cover next in the comments.